From Jack Johnson to Colin Kaepernick, Black athletes and their expressions of celebration and protest has been a controversial topic among sports fans, commentators, and of course the players themselves. Chico State professor and author of Policing the Black Athlete, Dr. Vernon Andrews, joins us today to discuss what makes this issue so charged and how it relates to the current debates between players and the public that watches them. Dr. Andrews, you open the book with a discussion of the varied reactions to Colin Kaepernick's starting the Take the Knee movement. What's the connection between Kaepernick's physical act of protest and the historic actions of American society in controlling and critiquing what you call, quote unquote, Black expression?
Yeah, well, that's a good question to start off with. And thanks for the invitation to talk about this, what I think of as an exciting book that does many different things. So thanks for being here. And I would have to say that I try to, if I took a bird's eye view from way up 30,000 feet and look down, what I would see is this control of the athlete, control of African Americans in society, but also in sport, a tight rein on clothing, on hairstyles, on what people do in the end zone, on tossing your bat, or Ricky Henderson doing a snatch catch. People bring in their individuality to the sport, and also sometimes in protests. And Muhammad Ali serves as sort of the centerpiece of the book because he was the initiator of a lot of that protest that really led to this wave of athletes even today. You can draw a direct line to that. So I look at Colin Kaepernick along that continuum, which is not only control of the body, but expression with the body. And what he was expressing was his distaste for the continued American denial of the freedom of expression in society and in the freedom of movement, such that we have police incidents left and right.
And incidentally, there's even an expression that was quoted in your book that was in a Washington Post story called being Kaepernicked. What exactly is that?
Well, I haven't mentioned being Kaepernick, but I think if I had to say, what was the context of this?
It was talking about what has been done to Colin Kaepernick in terms of the trajectory of his career, and that other players who took similar stands were now being, they used the term.
Okay, Kaepernick. I see what you mean. Yes, Eric Reed, among others.
Yes.
I guess that's a more formal way or a different way of saying blacklisted, which is basically, if you do that, you are on a list of people who protest and therefore may be bad for business.
Okay. You mentioned Ali as the centerpiece of the book, and I want to talk about Muhammad Ali for a second. You write the following: we praise him, you're speaking about Ali, for his moral fortitude. But many, both black and white, viewed him at the time as a traitor to Christianity, his race, and to the America that had given him the money and the freedoms that he complained about. How do you explain the evolution from the angry reactions you highlight in the book against black athletes like Ali, and him specifically, acting in celebration and protest, with the arc of his history where he went from vilified to lionized in a generation?
Sure. And I will say that there was a difference in how African American and white viewed him. For different reasons, they didn't like him. African Americans were skeptical of this thing called the Black Muslims. They were, because Christianity had sort of given us just about everything, so to speak, according to many Christians. It had given us some freedoms, actually a place to express ourselves, free from white control. So you're going against our religion, and you're speaking up, and you're possibly making things more difficult for us because of your mouth. So pipe down, because that's what we've always done since Jack Johnson, actually. And that's why Jackie Robinson and Joe Louis did all those things that Jack Johnson didn't do. You're supposed to stay away from white females, not mention anything about race unless it's in a positive manner. All of those things were sort of anti-Jack Johnson. So when Ali started this, people were like, wait a minute, we get along. We try to get along until till we get along even more and get some sort of advantages in society. You are messing it up. Be quiet. Don't get in white people's faces like that. So I think it took a generation to get away from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s when people became so oriented with me. I mean, the me generation, as they said. So by the time Ali steps out into the Olympics in Atlanta in 1996 during a halftime of a Dream Team basketball game and gets his gold medal back, that is the moment that crystallized it. Maybe also obviously lighting the torch. But this was his year, and this was Atlanta's way of saying, you know what, and the Olympic Committee's way of saying, we recognize this. You threw your medal away because it was a racist America and you were upset about coming to the South. We want to give you that gold medal back that was lost. That's what they used. And people realized, wait a minute, this was a guy who cared about more than himself. This guy was from a different time. He represented an integrity that many of us lack. Maybe he was right in over the ravages of time. Yes, it turns out he was right about that war. It ended poorly. And his conscientious objection was a conscientious objection because he had left his wife because she refused to be a Muslim. He married her for 9 months and she says, no, I'm not going to do that. I told you I was, but I'm not. He said, well, I have a vow. And my vow is that, this was going to happen. So we have to divorce, as painful as it was. He was devoted to the religion in ways that most people aren't devoted to their religion. And so that conscientious objection was real. And eventually people understood it much later in life. And again, in the 90s.
And based on that history, 20 years from now, do you think that in retrospect, that there will be a recalibration over time with the views of Colin Kaepernick and his protests?
Yes, and I think it'll happen sooner than that. And again, we're talking about two different types of two groups, basically, in this conversation, at least. For African Americans, I think there wasn't much argument with what he was doing. Some people were upset. Naturally, there's always going to be differences, but more African Americans agreed with what he was doing, especially after what happened with George Floyd and everything else. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, yes, even the NFL said that in essence, he was right and all those protests were right. So it's going to happen in a much shorter time for African Americans. For most, there was no time. It was like, we get this, finally, thank you for standing up. But with whites, there was a lot more that I put into the chapter about their negative views. Those negative views by some will never leave, Scott, will never leave. It'll always be there.
Well, let's talk about that and come back to sort of the grounding principles of your exploration of this topic. Explain for all of us, what is the term, as you use it, celebration, and what makes it such a charged issue, particularly within professional sports?
Yeah, and here's where you start to notice all the contradictions and all the hypocrisy. So I just want to code everything with that. So the idea is that I describe celebration as something that you would do in an excitable moment. When you have a success event could be a three-point play, a slam dunk, a home run, or a touchdown. Those are some of the many things that were success events. Specifically in football, with that success event, what is your behavior once you enter into that moment? And white culture and many African Americans have learned this idea about humility and learned through the Bible about how Jesus acted. And so we're all in this phase of graciousness in victory and humility in defeat, all of those things, actually the reverse of that. I think that people say one thing. They say that we don't want people to celebrate and be expressive because that hurts the other person. And for African Americans, it's like, well, you have nothing to do with this. This is about me and the crowd and that fourth wall I'm breaking down. This is what I just did. It has nothing to do. I'll do the same.
Fourth wall? Fourth wall?
Yes. I'm sorry, I just threw a concept. Irving Goffman talked about being on stage in life when we leave the house. There's a side stage, there's a backstage, this is his analogy, and then there's a front stage. So people are helping you on the sides, coaches and whatnot, and people behind you. But there's a wall between the audience and the actors and the athletes. And for white society, that wall should remain there. You're an athlete just performing sport in front of nobody. And for African Americans, that fourth wall is broken down. They're waving at people and pointing at people and looking at the camera and interacting with it. And in a way that shocks the white framework, because it's like, no, there's a wall there. We don't exist. Pretend we don't exist. And for African Americans, there's no pretending white people don't exist. Every day when we look at life, we have to be aware and conscious of our environments. So we're always aware. So playing to the audience comes from that idea of also the Black church, where there's a call and response. You can't be up there as a minister giving a sermon, unconcerned about your audience giving the same sermon. I'm going to tell you what I told you I was going to tell you. Therefore, we're going to go home and live a great life. No, African Americans needed this purge because this was the only place to express oneself. So when you learn this and it gets filtered through the culture into communities, from our ministers and our choirs and our deacons and everything else, we bring it into sport and we try to maintain that consistency. And that's a big thing in African American culture, being able to maintain your consistency of self across different dimensions so that you're not fake. Oh man, that brother's faking it over there. Oh, you know what? He's just perpetrating. Right. No, this is who I am. And this is who I am today, yesterday, and tomorrow in any setting that I'm in. That's a high standard.
What do you think makes this Black expression that takes place in professional sports? You referenced the white community. Why do you think that there's such a visceral reaction against it?
I think the visceral reaction against it is because of norms, is because of family norms. You know, the things our families tell us to do at the table and around the house. And when you invited a first date home, you knew that if that person had a habit in eating that your parents weren't going to like, you let them know in advance, hey, it's okay with me, but my parents don't like elbows on the table. They don't like people burping at the table or chewing with your mouth open. All those things we learn at home come out into the open. And I think that it's great when you can be humble, when you can afford to be humble, because your life has been full. When your life hasn't been full and you don't have many opportunities to celebrate the beautifulness of life, and you get an opportunity, you succeed at something, you know what? I'm going to show my success, not only for myself, but that you can see, someone else can see my joy, and you can try to achieve that. Now, unfortunately, quite often that's in sport, but I'm hoping, and the hope is that people can transfer that to the other things that they do. I have a story in the book about that. When I talk about being at the Oakland Coliseum, and I talk about playing catch with kids in the Coliseum parking lot, and the little kid, my nephew, and his little kid, you know, they went around talking about Pokemon this and Pokemon that, and he says, "Hey, I heard you're a professor, and you teach in college. Wow!" And my initial response was what I was trained to do in New Zealand, which was to downplay any success. So I told him, I said, "Oh yeah, that's no big deal. Go out there for a pass." But I realized during that pass that I wasn't really a New Zealander. I'm a citizen of New Zealand, and I lived there for 14 years, but this is my community that I have the most concern about. So when he came back, I said, "Kneel down for a second. Let me tell you something." And I kneeled down and talked to him, and I just said, you know, I grew up 1.3 miles from here, right over there on that hillside in Oakland. And I came here and I hung out at the A's games and I hung out in the parking lot just like you. You can also be a professor. And I gave him this little talk about looking for whatever it was about a minute worth of stuff that came out of my face at him. And he was like, "Wow, okay." I said, "Now go out for another pass." I felt it was my responsibility to be true to him for where I had gotten, because he hadn't seen that before. He needs to know. So I think that when African Americans express themselves and come back with a big car or whatever else, they're communicating to people that you can also succeed. And if I was not to do that, if I was just to pretend that it was normal and no big deal, and I'm humble and everybody has this kind of success in life, that's a disservice to him. That's a disservice to that community. And that's a disservice to African Americans.
Now, all that being said, you point out in the book that there is no monolith within the African American community on this, because things like how you were raised, the geography you come from, and the like, is that there's not a uniform way of expressing oneself or deciding what's appropriate or not, correct?
Certainly. And I will say that in backing up, that I do want to say something when I mention Black and white. When I mention white, I don't mean all white people. I'm a sociologist. There's never any 100% agreement upon anything. As a matter of fact, I would say the reverse. Many whites, especially many young whites, do appreciate expression and celebration and the bringing of Black language into everyday language. So
I actually wanted to ask you about that, because as much as you're focused on the concept of Black expression, it does raise the issue for me of class that goes across race, or the essentially the adoption by other groups of these norms within the African American community. My case example that I'd like you to respond to is Conor McGregor, who seems to be not very reserved or laid back in terms of his own expressions.
Right. I always laughed, but now it makes a big case. People will always talk about Irish as like the Black people of Europe. And I've heard that, and I had to sort of deconstruct all that. I think what they're saying is they're at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of white culture in the past. And they were the ones that were kicked around. They came to the US. They weren't even considered white. They had to lobby for years to be considered white. Same for Italians and same for Jews in America. And so when I see that, I think what Conor is doing is playing on that a little bit, saying, you know what, we have all this upper class stuff, and you get the best of our tennis and golfers, but I'm a boxer. And I'm from the hardcore part of Ireland. And sure, I grew up having fights, but I'm going to talk like the people talk on the street. I'm going to be who they are and who I am. And that, again, that consistency across situations. When you're a person on the totem pole, and many women have to experience this when they come into organizations, you have to kind of tone down whoever you are. And I think for Conor, he is in a sport that Muhammad Ali came up in. My goodness, to get attention, you do what Ali did. Ali did what he did in talking and picking rounds, not only because that was part of his fun personality, but he realized that whether you love me or hate me, you're going to want to come see me, either get beat or beat someone else. So my braggadocio is going to either upset you or it's going to embolden you.
But that's one of the reasons that I think that this gets a bit complicated, because one of the earliest movies I ever saw was the story of Babe Ruth. And there are many stories, whether true or not, about Babe Ruth pointing to where he was going to hit a home run. And that's just as predictive as Ali saying, I'm going to end it in 13. So I believe it would just seem that would cross dimensions with regards to race, class, and other things as well.
Well, it does. And it really is an individual thing. It's just that when it happens with whites, it's a bit of an outlier. I mean, if you look at the bell-shaped curve, there are going to be a few people out here on the end who are expressive, very expressive. And history, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, many other people, Mark the Bird Fidrich in baseball, and again, many others in basketball, Pete Maravich. But I think it tends to be an outlier. And I do want to say about the Babe Ruth incident that it's something important. And since I was looking at white expressive athletes over history, that moment was probably the biggest moment for braggadocio and whatnot. And so I looked it up and I read the entire history of that moment and the recap of that history. And he agreed that he didn't point to any place specifically. He just waved his bat around like he always did, and he hit a home run. Because the pitcher who was pitching against him was interviewed. And he says, Babe Ruth knows, and everybody on the field and in baseball knows, that if he did that, he'd be going down the next time he came up. But he didn't do that. And they asked Babe Ruth, and he says, yeah. He says, I just had a habit of really pointing to the outfield in general, because that was my thing to do before I hit. I do all my motions and I point it and I'd be ready. So that was, but Babe Ruth was one of those people. Even if he didn't do that, he was a person that believed in, you know what, I'm big, life is big, give me the cigars, give me the fur coats, the big everything. Joe Willie Namath in his time.
Right. I want to go back to your beginning and your inspiration for this book. In the book, you talk about the story of a person named Valerie and a race you watched when you were in high school. Share that story with us and what you drew from that event that informed the work that led to this book.
Right. Well, that event happened in roughly, I mean, if I had to, I think it's 72, I think I mentioned. Anyway, I was in the 8th grade. That's what I was, about 14 years old. So I came home from Alexander Hamilton Junior High School, walked to my house, which was about 5 blocks away from Fremont High School. There was a big track meet, so I decided to walk on in and take a look through the fence. And for the last event, I got there and saw maybe 30 minutes of it. But for the last event, everyone stood up on their feet. And there was just this roar, this murmur through the crowd. And I was like, well, what's about to happen? It was the 4 by 440. It was a relay race where they had, the sprint of about 110 yards each. So on the anchor leg of the match, that's what was it. The last person to get the baton for Castlemont High School, which was the rival high school on the East Oakland flatlands, to Fremont. Well, Fremont was ahead. Valerie got the baton maybe 3 or 4 lengths behind, which is a huge amount. But everyone knew that he was the fastest guy in Oakland. So he ran and ran and ran. And right as he caught the racer, as he got near the grandstand, which is a very appropriate word for what he did, grandstanding, he ran past the Fremont track star, this Castlemont guy, Carl Valerie, ran past him, flipped around, turned up his sunglasses, waved goodbye at the guy, flipped back around, and then sped off like the Roadrunner and won by even more than they had predicted. So it was an amazing moment. And just watching the crowd for the next 5 minutes slap lo-fis back then, high fives hadn't been invented yet. It was a moment, and I just walked home like, what did I just see? I just saw something I had never seen before, something very, very daring. And I stored it away. But a year later, I decided to go to Castlemont High School. And that was one reason. So for me, that was a moment. And I thought, wow, later in life, what would happen if he did that in a professional track meet or anything else? And I know the response. High school is appropriate, but you can't do that on the pro level. But that showed me that there was a way of expressing oneself that was very different. And I was like, my goodness. So I began to observe that in sport and try to mimic some of those things in my own life on occasion without the talent.
And we're going to have to leave it there. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate this interview and this chance to talk about this important work.
All right. And that's our show. Thanks to our guest, and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syphax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento
along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.